All right, let's get right into it. There's a really surprising military development happening in South Asia that has a lot of people talking. We've got American soldiers on the ground in Bangladesh, and, well, the reason why is a whole lot more complicated than it looks on the surface.
So this is the big question, right? The one that kicked off a total firestorm of speculation. As soon as the news dropped that U.S. troops were in Bangladesh, you had analysts and news channels all over the region just scrambling to figure out what was going on.
You know, the first and most obvious theory that popped up everywhere was that this was all about India. I mean, given the political winds blowing in the region, with Bangladesh maybe taking a bit of an anti-India turn, it kind of made sense. A strategic play aimed right at New Delhi. Seemed logical, but it turns out it's probably not the right answer.
Yeah, the real story here, the one that really matters, isn't about Bangladesh's relationship with India at all. To really get what's happening, you have to look just next door, right across the border to a country that's become a huge piece in this global chess game.
Okay, so let's pull up the map here and dive in, because the geography where this is all happening is absolutely everything. It's the key to understanding the real target of this whole operation.
So check this out. The key detail is the location. These joint exercises, they've got code names like Pacific Angel and Thunder Lightning, but they're taking place in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, and that was no accident. Why? Because it is literally right on Myanmar's doorstep. Word from intelligence circles is that this has very little to do with training Bangladesh's army and everything to do with setting the stage for something focused entirely on Myanmar.
But why? Why Myanmar? To really get why this country is suddenly at the center of all this high-stakes maneuvering, you've got to take a quick look back at its really turbulent history.
You see, Myanmar's story is this constant back and forth. After it got independence, it tried to stay out of the Cold War drama. But then, a military coup in '62 completely changed the game, pushing the country right into China's arms for decades. Then, in 2011, it looked like democracy might finally have a shot, but that hope was completely wiped out by another military takeover in 2021. And that just made the country even more dependent on Beijing.
So, what is it about Myanmar that makes it so incredibly important? It's not just about politics or influence. No, the answer is something that's literally buried deep in the earth.
It all comes down to this number, third. That is Myanmar's rank in the world for reserves of something that powers our entire modern society, rare earth elements.
So what in the world are rare earths? I mean, the name sounds kind of exotic, but they are the absolute building blocks for pretty much all of our modern tech. The smartphone in your pocket, the electric car you might be thinking about buying, and yeah, even the most advanced military gear, none of it works without these things. And here is the absolute crux of the issue. China is already the world's #1 producer of these elements. It's basically a monopoly. And by cutting deals with Myanmar's military rulers, Beijing is just tightening its grip, pulling these resources out of the ground and making itself the gatekeeper of the global tech supply chain. It's a huge weapon to have in a trade dispute with the U.S.
And that brings us right back around to those U.S. soldiers in Bangladesh, because when you're facing that kind of stranglehold on resources this vital, you have to make a move. This is America's countermove on that giant geopolitical chessboard.
I mean, just look at the goals here. They are polar opposites. The U.S. wants to shatter China's monopoly and get its own access to Myanmar's resources. China, on the other hand, wants to protect that monopoly and keep Myanmar's government firmly in its corner. You've got two superpowers with completely different objectives fighting over the exact same prize.
So, how does the U.S. pull this off? How do you achieve your goal without sparking a direct conflict with China? Well, the strategy seems to be all about quiet, indirect influence.
From what we can piece together, the plan looks like a 4-step play. First, use the military exercises in Bangladesh as the perfect cover story for being in the neighborhood. Second, from there, you quietly reach out and build a relationship with Myanmar's military leaders. Third, you offer them a deal, a better deal than what China's giving them. And fourth, if it all works, you manage to sideline Beijing and open up a brand new supply line for these incredibly critical resources.
But you gotta ask, why would Myanmar's generals even pick up the phone? Well, it really boils down to money and legitimacy. The U.S. has hit them with some heavy economic sanctions. A deal can mean those sanctions go away, and that would let the junta sell their rare earths to whoever pays the most on the world market, instead of being stuck with just one buyer, China.
Now, a play like this doesn't happen in a vacuum. The ripple effects, the shock waves from this move could totally redraw the map of power in Asia and have huge consequences for everybody involved.
If you're sitting in Beijing, This looks like a massive threat. A long-term American presence next door isn't just about rare earths. It could lead to the U.S. setting up listening posts to spy on China's own sensitive military bases, satellite facilities, and maybe even nuclear sites that are right near the border.
And what about India? Even though they aren't the main target, the idea of having American troops operating for the long haul in a politically shaky neighbor like Bangladesh, that's a serious security headache. It just adds one more layer of instability to a region that's already incredibly complex.
So when you peel back all the layers here, what we're seeing is that a seemingly simple military exercise in Bangladesh is actually a critical move in a much bigger, high-stakes global game. It's a struggle for the raw materials that will build the 21st century. And that leaves us with a huge question. Are we just watching a quiet fight over minerals, or are we seeing the very first moves of a new Cold War playing out right here in South Asia?